your response when you heard that he'd done this?
Not surprised, and instead I just saw it as the fitting rotten cherry on top of the Biden presidency. Um, I think you give Joe Biden more credit on rectitude than he deserves.
No, I said he
Um,
claims to be a man of rectitude. I didn't say I agreed with him necessarily.
I claim to be 6'6". I'm not. Um, and on the other hand, though, it does highlight a dynamic that for Joe Biden family really does come first. Um, and in light of this pardon, it's sort of you're looking essentially at almost two families that have issues. The Trumps, the Bidens, both look polluted, both look dirty. So far as the Trumps ended up looking to profit from office, the Biden's family has also looked to profit from office. And that's what ended up getting Hunter into hot water in the first place. And the Hunter piece is something that actually plagued people who were around Joe Biden heading into the 2020 campaign. They saw him as a ticking time bomb. They knew they could not really talk to Joe Biden about it. He would become heavily defensive. You ended up getting the indictments. You ended up now getting the conviction, and by the jury, you also ended up getting a guilty plea. And now it all gets topped off with a pardon.
He says, the president says, that while his son should take responsibility for what he's done, and we'll come on to what Hunter has said about that, the case became politicized. I guess could a trial of a president's child be anything other than politicized?
The short answer is it's not a short answer. What Hunter Biden was charged with was tied into the existence of Joe Biden's nexus to power, the executive, the presidency. This goes back to his time when he was when Biden was Barack Obama's president. And suddenly stories began surfacing about Hunter. The Obama White House basically said it's a personal thing for Joe Biden, but basically made its disgust known. And it didn't seem to deter Hunter, and it did not cause Joe Biden to yank his son into line. And so to say it's politicized, the whole origin of this is politics. How many people have that type of nexus to power or to money? So you either have to have that much wealth to have that nexus, or you need to be that wired into the system. And as far as Biden went, his family ended up turning his political existence into its own cottage industry. And so for him to say, oh, it was politicized, that's a bit much.
Donald Trump has made it clear today, in light of this, that he disapproves of it. Has he got room to talk?
No. I mean, it's basically sharks versus jets. Going back to life on the in Broadway and on the screen and stage. It's Montagues versus Capulets. It doesn't matter in that sense. You have two rival gangs, and each is pointing a finger at the other and trying to trash the other as badly as possible. And no one is willing to say they're both pretty dirty.
Do you think that, given how clear he was in June, that clip we just played, do you think that what the Democrats did to Biden and his legacy, or his hoped-for legacy, have hardened his heart to them and his head to them, and he's just thought, right, if you're going to trash me, I'm going to take my son with me and save him?
I think yes, but again, that entire Biden presidency, looking back on it, and I know he's not yet out the door, has been an exercise in self-indulgence and wishful thinking. There was a book that came out 2022 on the Biden presidency at that point, Jonathan Martin, Alex Burns, then of the New York Times. What do they write? They write Biden is having conversations with members of Congress, comparing himself to FDR saying that he's a more transformational president than Barack Obama. That's a guy who's already detached from reality. Then he expects the Democrats to welcome him with open arms, even though apparently he's already addled and performs poorly against Donald Trump. And he's saying, why don't you appreciate what I have done? And the only response that the party in hindsight can say is, really? How clueless can you be in office, and how clueless are you going to be outside of office? Does Biden at this point care? I think Biden is bitter. I think Biden basically threw two sheets to the wind and said, I don't care anymore. It's going to be about my family. But again, it was always about Biden and his family, the good and the bad. He was a father to two sons who had tragically lost their mother in an accident.
And their sister, yeah.
He was there for them. I mean, it's complicated, but it's a reminder that becoming president, going to the White House, is not an alternate to, what do you call it, serious therapy. Get your therapy. Don't run for office. Don't put it on the taxpayer's dime. Don't make it a national spectacle. And now we're seeing the spectacle.
I think it was David Axelrod who said when Obama came to him and asked him for his help in the campaign, going way back now, he said to him, what's your thing? And he said, what do you mean, what's your thing? And he said, whenever I help anybody to campaign, I want to know why they want the office that they want, and I want them to tell me the thing that drives them. And Obama's thing was his father and the absence of the father and what he'd since found out about his father. Anyway, what was Joe Biden's thing? Was it the tragedy? Was it the sort of working class hero thing that he'd like to present to the world? Or is he just a dad who was not going to leave his son behind at the end?
I think there are different things at different points in his life. I think family definitely assumed a critical role very early on in his career. You go back in time, though, he was elected to Senate before tragedy felt his family. Was ambition there? Yes. Did he always see himself as a possible U.S. president? Yes. Did most of the country generally see him as a possible president? No. He runs in 1980 for the presidency Democratic nomination 1988. He doesn't get it. And he's forced to drop out over plagiarism allegations. Fast forward, he gives it another shot. He falls flat. Barack Obama redeems him, gives him a shot, gives him a place, makes him vice president. I think the Bidens feel, I think Joe Biden feels that Obama should have tapped him to be his successor in 2016. It doesn't happen. Biden keeps a chip on his shoulder from that. But instead of just having a chip on your shoulder and then engaging in some personal introspection, it becomes, I can do this, Trump is evil, therefore the Democrats need to go to me. And in a sense, he had this very point correctly. He understood that he, of any of the Democratic candidates, was closest to the cultural center of the United States. And he went with it. His problem becomes in office, several. One, Hunter is a nightmare ready to explode. Two, he ends up saying, I'm going to now move to the left in the process of winning an election and in governing, which is not the traditional path. You go to the center. If you're going to go big on spending, you cling to the cultural center. Best case of that was Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton was a stick in the eye to what could be described as liberalism. This was a guy who could quote the gospel. His personal life may have been a mess.
Whilst playing the sax.
Right, but he understood the value of it. And he talked, when he would speak about things like abortion, he would talk about making it safe and rare. He understood that there were cultural wrinkles. Joe Biden never seemed, there was a time in his life where he did. But once he ended up becoming the nominee, he threw all caution aside.
Really interesting talking to you. Do you understand what he did as a father?
The answer is yes, but if you take a look at The Sopranos, in the end, Tony Soprano snuffs out essentially not his actual son, his adopted son. He understood things had to happen for him to keep the business going. And yeah,
we began with
Joe
the gang.
Biden is not under indictment, but
Yeah.
He could have learned one more lesson from Tony Soprano.
Okay. We began with the gangs of not quite New York, the gangs of Washington, and ended with the Sopranos. Thank you.